can focus on me.
Exactly. I'm just trying to.
You know, if anybody would like to get some breakfast, please help yourselves. And then anybody who really is not eating, I'd appreciate it if you'd come up and sit forward on these blue chairs for our presenters. You know, anybody who still is snacking, that's okay. Stay at your table. We're very informal here. That's fine, yeah.
Okay, cool. Everybody stand.
Kick your train.
Everybody that way.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Hi, how are you? Thank you.
So feel free to wander back and forth, getting coffee, getting bagels, whatever. You know, we are very informal. I know everybody here knows that.
Can I sit here? Is my head going to be in the
You can try. We'll know in a second if you just don't kick the tripod. 'Cause I know where you work. I will come find you later.
Are you sure you want to?
no,
You're a
starting the
fire
fire.
woman, Josephine.
Is that okay? Or is my head in the way?
Sit normal.
Are you guys good?
Okay, if you scooch like half an inch this way, you're good. That way. That way.
Just be careful of the wires, Mary.
I don't want to
Mary,
start no
you're in the
trouble.
hot seat.
I'm always in the
Have these already or do you need other ones?
Fine, thank you.
Okay, good morning, everybody. I would like to welcome you all to our Staff Development Day. I'd like to especially thank Professor Ellie Amdur and our Dean of Student, Michelle McCroy-Hines, for being here with us this morning. Dave Miles is another of our speakers, and he will be along presently. Provost Kiernan has a sort of a problematic schedule today, and he will drop in when he can. That's as per Joan and Michelle. We have a few guests also invited to join us for lunch later at around noon. And they will be a few folks from the departments that really have become part of our library family during this past year. I'd like to say from the heart that the reason we are here today is because we've had a great year. And we've had a great year thanks to all of you. You know, we recovered from the installation of the elevator. We completed our first inventory in a long time. We provided more library instruction classes to students than ever before. We were over 160 this year. We have circulated more books and DVDs and magazines and other materials than any time in recent years. That is all thanks to you, the people who work in all of our public services departments and in our technical services departments. So actually, you guys made our wonderful year possible. And the reason for our wonderful year is really to provide for our students. Now, I think that it is really because of our combined efforts as a team that the university has provided us with the wonderful support that they have. You all know that starting with new carpeting, followed by the installation of the elevator, that we had the whole renovation of our lighting system in the reference reading room. So, an amazing concept. Students can actually see to read. Right now, as we speak, I know you all came in through the construction zone here this morning. Thank you. I said to Steve and Rob out front, I said, I guess we didn't pick the best day to have our event. And he said, don't worry, any day we will get you in there. And then I said, but will you get us out? They laughed, and I kept going. I'm sure we won't have any trouble getting out. But I think it's because of really our combined efforts on behalf of our campus community, our students, our faculty, our fellow staff members, our alumni, that the university has really supported us so beautifully. Just the other day, when I had my budget meeting with Provost Kiernan, He graciously continued his tradition of providing a gift for the library as part of his advanced spending program. And he's purchasing yet another outdoor table for our outdoor seating area for students. I personally can hardly wait to see students sitting out here happily reading, drinking coffee, surfing the web on their laptops, you know, at the library and with us. So anyway, our first speaker is here. Our time is short, but I want to thank you all and say that it's because of you that we've had a great year. We've done our job for our campus community, especially for our students. And I so much appreciate the fact that Michelle is here today. She is the Dean of Students, Metropolitan Campus, the advocate for our students. And since our mission is really to serve our FDU students, I think there would be no better way to start this Staff Development Day. I'd like to welcome Michelle McCrory-Hines, Metropolitan Campus Dean of Students.
Okay. So Kathy told me that this was a relatively informal group, so I thought I'd do this presentation by starting with some effective strategies, talking about millennials, and then answering any questions that you may have. So as we go through the presentation, there will be strategies given to you. And this is the baseline. This is the average millennial student. And we all know that we also have special millennial students amongst us now that some things have changed. And I'm not a millennial student.
Let's try getting back to that. There you go.
Okay, here we go. Maybe it's just me. Doesn't like me.
The arrow, just push the arrows itself.
Arrows itself.
There you
Okay,
go.
there we go. All right, so we all know that the millennial students are always connected, right? How many of you are at the library and well, we know we've had some laptop problems in the library with laptops being stolen because it's their second nature. They have them all the time. And it's not just about their laptops. They all have these smartphones now, right? So even if they're not on the computer, they're on their smartphone and they're texting and they're twittering and they're blogging and they're foursquaring. Does everyone know what Foursquare is?
Yep.
Yep. Okay, we got a yep in the back from the millennial. Okay, Foursquare is a way of checking in. So you can tell all of your friends with the click of a button, and when I mean all of your friends, I mean all 2,000, because the more friends you have, real or not, you can tell them all about where you are. I personally, Foursquare actually scares me, because you can say that, you know, I'm a 23-year-old going to a club by myself, but meet me there at 9, 10 o'clock. And Foursquare has all kinds of very special things with it. For example, you know, you can be the mayor. If you are the mayor of Starbucks, do you know that you get 10% off? And by checking in, whoever checks in the most is the mayor of Foursquare, okay? So it's a very, very interesting concept that everyone knows where you are all the time. And, well, as we've seen with Mr. Wiener, he thinks that that's all private. So they're always connected. And I'm assuming you all know what Facebook is now, right? MySpace is fading out. They're at, I think, 1 million, but they've been holding at that number for a very long time. So that's kind of fading out. And we all know what the Twitter is? We all know? Do I have to? Yeah? Okay. So millennials love to collaborate. They love to work together. They love the collaborative process. Millennials want to participate, okay? They want to collaborate not only with each other, but with faculty and staff and librarians. They want a very collaborative process. They want to work with you. And that's their learning style, which is a little bit different than, you know, previous generations. And of course, they love the social network. There we go. So who are they? They're generally born between 1981 and 1989, or 1999. This year's student class will be born in 1993, which I have a very distinct memory of. So just goes to show you that I'm getting older. But we have the Chelsea Clintons, the Tiger Woods, the Buffys, the Britney Spears, the Prince William. Figured I'd put some people that you all recognized up here because they're in the news all the time. But when you look at that, you know, Britney Spears, what is she in the news for? It's not necessarily the good stuff. Well, Tiger Woods too, I suppose. So those are kind of the people. Now these are a little bit older than our current students coming in, but it kind of gives you an idea of who they are. All right, so there's always things that define a generation, right? So, you know, back in my day, there was no internet. I didn't have an email account until I was in my master's program, okay? But these kids have always had an internet account. My 4-year-old daughter has an email address, okay? They've always had MySpace and Facebook. Their defining tragedies would be Oklahoma City, Columbine, 9/11. They have a very distinct memory of that. Whereas my tragedy would have been the Space Shuttle Challenger explosion. So it's just a different concept. They don't know about that. I mean, maybe they know about it through history, but they don't have any recollection of it. They remember 9/11. They remember Columbine. And I included cyberspace because Facebook and MySpace are their own site. They think of that as their space. When they go into cyberspace, the blogs, the chat rooms, and the Twitter, they understand, generally speaking, they understand that that is out there, that everyone's going to get it. Now, Facebook and MySpace, it's out there, everyone's going to get it. One of the things we discuss with the students when they come in is the agreements for Facebook and MySpace. How many of you have signed up for any kind of account and you hit the I agree and submit? How many of you read what you're agreeing to? Oh, go. One person in the room. Okay. I usually get no one.
I didn't this weekend.
You didn't this weekend. Okay.
I lied.
Well, here's an interesting thing. When you sign up for Facebook, anything you post is no longer yours. It's in the contract you're signing. So we have, and Facebook is the same, although there's a little bit more security, like this much, with Facebook. We used to have discussions with students, you know, when you put up that naked picture of yourself or that half-naked picture and you're swirling around on a pole, if that ends up in Playboy because MySpace sells it, that's out there. They own that. And the concept was so foreign to them. They were so floored by the information. I'm like, you need to think in different terms, okay? So they're very realistic, okay? They are aware of threats. They are more aware of threats than we are. Most of the tips come from millennial people. They're aware. They know when gangs are coming into the neighborhood. They know when things like Columbine are going to happen. They come into our office. They tell us when somebody's in trouble because they're being beaten up by their boyfriend. They don't want to see that. They're a very fair society. They really think in terms of the greater good. They're aware of flaws. They understand that politicians are not perfect. They understand the flaws with the president, with the school system, with recycling, the whole 9 yards. They look at the whole picture. Okay? And they have really strong bonds. That's why they're so into social networking. They're very close with their parents, with their extended families, and with their friends. They're looking for security in a non-secure world, okay? They understand that school may not be safe, so they want to make sure that they have these strong bonds, okay? It's very, very important to them. Okay, they're tech savvy, all right? We've said that over and over, but it's truly second nature to them. I'll go back to my 4-year-old. My 4-year-old sits on Santa's lap for Christmas this year. She asked for 2 things. Number 1 is a sibling. Okay, we're obviously working on that. And the second thing is an iPod. She's like, I would like an iTouch. My God, right. So at the point where she sits on Santa's lap and then tells everyone that Santa's going to bring her an iTouch, what do? She still believes in Santa. So we suck it up and we buy her an iTouch. Do you know that that child can use that thing like nobody's business? It's unbelievable. And in the school systems now, including my daughter's school, she's over at Bergen Academy. There's a child care center with the technical school next door. They have smart boards. she's in pre-K 3, okay? She's 4, but she's still in the pre-K 3 because we haven't graduated. And they're utilizing the iPads, the iPads for students with disabilities. Because autistic children, the process that's used for it, they're using that like there's nobody's business, and it's really helping them to learn and grow. So it is second nature to them, which we all know it's not for me. They have always had a cell phone, and they've always had a computer. There's never been a time, I forget what we were, but my daughter was like, what's that? It was a payphone. Do you remember these things? You put 25 cents in, 35 cents. You don't see payphones anymore. They don't exist. And as far as a computer goes, she doesn't even want a desktop. We're already onto the laptop and the iPad, you know? So, but this is our generation. It's why they're carrying it all around. But that makes their time and space barriers very, very different than ours. You know, we are used to working 9 to 5, and you go home, and then you come in the next day. I've gotten complaints from students that they sent an email at 7 o'clock at night, and nobody got back to them until 10 o'clock the next day. Well, but their time and space are very different. They're always connected, they're always working, they're always going. So it's just very different to them. Okay, family matters, and this is really important because you will see this when somebody in the family is sick. Do any of you teach classes? A few of you? Okay, and you get the student who's like, well, I have to go to the hospital because grandma, auntie, uncle, brother, sister, they're there, and we're all getting together because, you know, we're going to pray for them, or, you know, we all have to be there till we get the news. They have very strong family values, and because they like to participate, they include the extended family. They have really strong child-parent bonds, and they're very communicative. I'm very interested to see what transpires in this generation. You know, the baby boomers and the millennials have a 50% divorce rate. I'm wondering if this generation will have the same because they're so family-oriented. I'm very curious to see how it kind of works out myself. That was a little busy. Okay, work and work expectations, because this goes into the learning and teaching and all that good stuff. They like to be collaborative, creative, and positive. They don't like negative. As a matter of fact, that's very negative. They just want to be happy and fun all the time, okay? They like structure, which is very different than the millennial generation. Millennial generation, they want to work on their own, or not millennial, Gen Xers. We like to work on our own, we like to kind of have our own free time, kind of come and go as we please. These students like structure and supervision because they need immediate feedback. They like to have immediate positive or negative feedback. So the rewards and the feedback kind of go hand in hand, but that's really important to them. You know, a baby boomer, as long as they were patted on the back once a year, they got their gold watch, they were good. But these kids need more feedback. They like things positive. So any place that creates a positive work environment for them, they're all over. They love it. If you use technology, better yet. Okay? They embrace technologies and ideas and implement them very easily. Okay? I resisted learning how to do PowerPoint and Excel. It's second nature to them. And if you change it all up and do something new, that's fine. It's not a problem. 2 or 3 years ago, I have an employee with me who was at the time 74, 75. She's 77 now. And she's doing checkbooks for me. Okay? So she had a ledger and pen and paper and a calculator. And that's how she was doing it. And Peter Foreman and company came in and said, what are you doing? Well, now you have to do everything by hand. So they made her go over to the online checking system, which I'm sure some of you have, right? Yes, yes, some of you have made the transition. Some of you may be resistant like myself, you know, because yeah, I'm a Gen Xer, so I think if I put all that stuff online, then somebody's going to get to it. You know, we're very skeptical. But she cried. I mean, she cried for days, and I had to have a student sit with her and work with her. I thought she was going to quit. I really did. She's like, this is too much, it's too much change. Whereas a millennial student would be like, oh, don't worry about it, let me teach you this isn't a big deal. It's very second nature to them. But they also expect fairness and diversity. They expect to be in a diverse workplace. They don't like a homogeneous group. But everyone should be treated very fairly, very democratic in nature. If you're doing a group project, everyone takes on the appropriate percentage. Okay? Learning. They will learn at any time. That's why they look things up on their phones and their computers. But they want clear direction. Okay? So they want their syllabuses to be clear. They want to write down the directions you give them on how to do a paper, whatever it is. They just want everything to be very clear and distinct. It's very important for them to be the best. If they're not the best, there's no point in doing it, okay? So everything has to be clear because they want everything to be perfect. Very high standards for themselves. Put cross-training in here. They don't mind lectures. They don't embrace them, but they don't mind them. But they want a very diversified learning experience. So if you have the faculty member who comes in and gives a lecture, maybe there's a PowerPoint, maybe there's not, they're a terrible professor. Now they could have been teaching here for 50 years and one of the highest rated faculty members 10 years ago. But they need to do different things. They like podcasts. Do you all know what a podcast is? Okay. They like blogging with the faculty member. They like the interaction. Okay. So they have to mix it up. Do some, some assignments that, there's hands-on. Their needs. So we're back to the immediate feedback. It needs to be quick and precise. This one's really hard to read. Discussion is not about telling them. It's about negotiation and collaboration. They don't see the authority that was once part of society. If you are the faculty member, I would like to collaborate with you to learn more, because I'm all about learning all the time, but I want to put in my input. It's important to them. They want to feel important. Less than best is terrible. There is no reason to be less than the best, okay? Again, for them, time is not an issue. We'll just do it. Doesn't matter if it's 11 o'clock at night, 2 o'clock in the morning, checking your email on the way into work, whatever. And action is innovation. So they like to be innovative. They like to keep moving. The feedback, the discussion, the negotiations, being the best. What do they want? They want things to be simple. They figure computers simple, but they want simplicity. They want 24/7 access. To some degree, they expect us to work 24/7. But that's the beautiful thing about the library and the library systems, because you have stuff online. You have CoolCat. You have all this stuff. So they perceive you people as being very accessible. They want user participation, so they want to be actively involved. They want to interact. It's how they learn. They want to use their collective intelligence. So they want your opinion and my opinion and their colleagues' opinions. Everything is to be collective. And they like novelty. You throw in a game, a group activity with a piece of paper and they have to figure something out. They love that stuff. It makes them very happy. We do Playfair as part of orientation. It's the highest rated program. It is unbelievable. They meet, the goal of the program is to meet 100 people in an hour, but it's all games. They love the novelty of that. They just think it's fantastic. The other thing we do is we do a lip sync competition. Personally, I think it's silly. I think it's ridiculous. They love it. I don't stop doing it because it's so highly rated. They love working together. They love picking out the music together. They love the collaboration. And they love being the best and winning. Okay, so what are some more strategies? Okay, so we know that group and teamwork work best for this group. Right? That's an easy one. They don't like, you have to personalize things. They don't like the one size fits all. This is me and what I'm about. You want to try being interactive. They love to learn, but they expect collaboration. And that's kind of a hard transition depending on what generation you're in. You know, the baby boomers are used to just kind of providing information. So getting feedback from a student for some folks is more difficult. Again, with the wanting the self-service 24/7 access and getting complaints that nobody got back to them until 9 o'clock the next morning. But the other thing for you guys is researching in the dorm is the norm, right? So you have people who come to the library. There's a whole lot of people who are utilizing your services who never stepped foot in the door. Okay, so one of the things that I thought about is maybe having an online chat. Do you guys do that?
Yes.
Okay. So you're doing a lot of this stuff. All right. Now I leave it open for questions, but I want to focus on a couple of things because one of the things, I love teaching millennials. I have had the best time in the last like 2 years teaching because they're so eager to learn and they're so much fun. And I think they're more fun than even 5 years ago. I know that 5 years ago they're considered millennials, but they're different now, in my opinion. I see a definite transition in the last couple of years. So I think they're a lot of fun. But they also provide challenges. How many of you have had special snowflakes come into the library? Students who are a little, perhaps off. Any of you have seen these students? You'll see a higher number. Kathy's like, yep. Yep. I know you have because Kathy's given me a call a few times. The psychological drugs that are available now to students is tremendous and it's wonderful. It really is. I think it's fantastic. But it brings in a different student. It's a student who wouldn't have been in college 10 years ago, okay? Maybe even 5 years ago. And sometimes, especially the Asperger's student, does everyone know what Asperger's is? Yeah, okay. So it's a form of autism, and we have a program on campus now for Asperger's students. It's called the Compass Program, and it's housed in the psychology department. So there's a group of students working with, a group of doctoral students working with incoming undergraduate students. It's a 2-year program, and they come in and they get individual counseling, group counseling, and they also get some academic support. So what that person's supposed to do is really teach them about time management, how to utilize their skills, really focus on the academics to help them get through their college experience. Not something we had 5 years ago, but they're here and they're wonderful and they're in the residence halls, they're in the cafeteria, and they're in the library. Okay, the first group we had, which was I guess 4 years ago now, 3-4 years ago, we did a training with the orientation leaders and we told them what to expect and whatever, and we kind of judged the orientation leaders and we decided that 3 or 4 of them would get the first group. So you would get one, you get one, you get one, that way they're kind of diversified and everything would be good. So I know who they are, the students don't, but I know who they are. I have the doctoral students with us, okay, we're good there. But throughout the overnight sessions, we do an overnight orientation, I had 10 orientation leaders come up to me and Stephanie Ulrich in the doctorate program saying, hey, I got one of your students, but it's okay. There was 4 people in the program. We had 14 students with Asperger's at that orientation session. So they're here, and they're a little bit socially awkward. So they like to collaborate, but sometimes they don't process social cues like other people, okay? You may have noticed it. They're in your face too much. Maybe they keep talking and they don't stop. Maybe they focus on one topic, okay? Does anyone have any questions about those students or how to handle them or what would be better? No one?
Well, what do you do then? If you know, the old-fashioned person would be quiet. What do you do? You don't do that.
Yeah, you have to stop them. And you'll
You do.
notice, I mean, the Asperger students are very socially awkward. And they will tell you, the ones in the Compass program will tell you. Does everyone know Steven? Steven's my favorite one. He's usually outside, front lawn, playing swords by himself
Oh,
when he's nervous. Do you know? Okay. When he gets nervous, he paces off and he kills his imaginary people in his video games. And if Stephen stopped doing that, I'd be really nervous, okay? Because that's Stephen's normal behavior, okay? When you talk about behavior interventions, you want to talk about what's normal for the person. So Stephen, when he gets nervous, he'll pace a little bit, he'll do some sword fighting, and then he's good. But Stephen will talk to you all day about the books he's writing. He's incredibly intelligent and incredibly bright, and he's been writing a series of novels based on World War III. But everything is thought out. The names of the characters coincide with what they do, and I mean, very elaborate stuff that he's doing. But sometimes you have to say, okay, Stephen, I appreciate hearing about your book, but I need to. Can I answer your specific question? But it works for all Asperger's students. You have to stop them, because they will suck the life out of you. They will continue.
Yeah.
And the glazed over look and the stepping back, they don't necessarily take those cues. They've been trained on them. Like, they're literally trained to, you know, they can say 6 things and then they have to stop and wait for you to respond. But they'll be like, well, for dinner I had steak, potatoes, and peas. And then they stop. There's like no question. There's nothing for you to, but that's part of their training so that they can interact better. Okay? But they're also part of the millennial generation, and I include them because they're here and they weren't here a couple of years ago. Does anyone have any questions for me? I could answer whatever you have.
I was wondering to what extent your comments about the characterizations of millennial students, to what extent they apply to other countries versus just the U.S. and Canada.
Well, my statistics, and I didn't include a reference page, which is probably very bad of me. I had a graduation to go to yesterday. My cousin graduated, and I just didn't get to finish that part, so I apologize. It's pretty much across the board to your developing countries, so like Japan and Europe, maybe not so much Africa. The countries that have the internet access and the phones and the accessibility, it's pretty standard across the board. Other questions for me? Yep.
Michelle, you know, a lot of the things that you've said this morning, as you were going through your points that you've raised, I think really do impact on us very directly as librarians and library staff members. So much of what we do, in a sense, was set down, sort of engraved in stone, years ago. And many of us, our training was years ago. And I think really we do have to always take that extra step to take into consideration certainly the learning styles and the technologies that students are using constantly, but I think also very important for us to take into consideration the fact that we do have many, many students with special needs in our midst that we may not have had here, you know, 10 to 15 years ago.
Correct. Correct, absolutely. Any other questions for me? Of course. Go ahead. Well, I always feel like I'm going to be challenged. You're faculty. You know, you're not as nice as librarians.
I'm curious here. How has all this affected curriculum development?
It's very interesting. I looked up a little bit of that. I didn't spend much time researching it. Curricular development is changing in the elementary schools and in the high schools, but it's not necessarily changing in college. It's very interesting. I mean, my kid has a smart board in her pre-K 3 room, but faculty get their doctorate, and they don't necessarily have a lot of the teaching stuff behind them. So the younger faculty are using a lot of these things because it's interactive and interesting, but faculty who are perhaps older aren't getting a lot of training across the board, across the United States. That's kind of all of what I found. I don't know if that answers your questions. I can do a little more research.
And syllabus content and things like that? How is some of this filtering in?
Well, it's interesting because the faculty kind of complain to me, because that's what faculty do. I know you don't. faculty were giving feedback on our orientation. So one of the things we're doing this year is we're actually having a class for all freshmen. It'll be part of orientation, and it's on classroom expectations. What is the syllabus? Because it's a contract, right? Like, faculty and students are supposed to follow the contract. What is the syllabus? What is appropriate expectations? You know, some of them don't read the materials. They have very high expectations. One of the articles I was reading was a faculty member gave her students this particular test, whatever it was, and then after the test she asked, what do you think your grade is? How much time and effort did you put studying for this? And what would you do differently next time? Maybe not in that order. So most of the students said, well, I reviewed my notes on the way in. I kind of, sort of, direct quote, looked things over. I read some of the chapter. Well, what do you expect to get? Most of them said an A or a B. Like, they didn't necessarily put the work in, but they expected the A or a B. So when the question came up of what will you do differently next year, she's like, some of them actually put, I'll buy the book. She's like, hey, how can we be 4 weeks into the semester without the text for the class? Which was pretty interesting, which is, I guess, part of the reason why we're doing this whole classroom expectations. The difference between WebMail, WebAdvisor, Blackboard, like the whole kind of gamut. And we're actually having Pat Reynolds and Bob Vody put that together for us. Apparently Pat Reynolds, that's his first class. And he does a 5 or 6 page syllabus that's very, very detailed. Because again, it goes back to, they want very clear expectations. Okay.
Michelle, based on feedback that you receive from students, because you see them in a different context than we do, what are things that the library could do to be more student-friendly, more welcoming to students, more accessible, more usable? And what are things that we as staff can do to make that happen?
It's a very hard question for the library. I'm going to answer your question in a minute, okay?
Now, I was just going to kind of add to what Professor Unger was saying, is I find the students, I mean, compared to when, like, I went to college in the dark ages, they're much more career-oriented. They're much more, what am I going to get out of this course physically?
Yes.
Than I mean, I just wanted to get away from my parents, you know, and I didn't really care what I studied. But, you know, I was much more liberal arts type of thing. They're much more conscious of the fact that they are paying for this, that this is, you know, what not.
Well, it's more expensive now, right?
More
Everything's
expensive,
getting
and many
cut.
times they have to come up with some of the money too, or find
Right.
ways to get it. And also, so they're under a lot more pressure, I think, and they're a lot more, where is this going to take me in a workday world?
Well, it's a couple of things, right? When we set up this whole school structure, the initial thought for the state schools, not necessarily the privates, but the state schools was 30% of your education was going to come from the state. And 30% was going to come from the federal government. And you were going to pay 30%, and then the other 10% was supposed to come from alumni donations, right? That was kind of the thought. And, you know, Christy Todd Whitman came into office, and whatever her faults or great things were, one of the things she did is she disbanded the Department of Higher Education. She kind of got rid of it. And then all of a sudden, the state of New Jersey was paying 32%, and then 34%. And it's gone up a little bit each year. I think we're up to like 37.2. Don't quote me on that number, but it's 37 point something. So they're paying more for it. And while people aren't getting jobs, I mean, don't bother going into teaching. You're never going to get a job. I'm kidding. In 2018, there's going to be a teacher shortage because no one's going into the field, and there'll be a massive retirement. But the point is, they want to know what they're getting for their money and what they're going to make on the back end, because they have to be the best, right? I'm going to come back to your question, I promise. Other questions? No? Okay, so we're going to go back to Kathy's question. All right, so as a library offering assistance via web, via chat is a great idea. Because again, studying in the dorm is norm, right? That's where they're doing their research. So you kind of have to reach out to them. You got the online system. And I really struggled with this presentation, Kathy, because I will share with you. It's okay. I'm supposed to provide you with effective strategies. And for those of you who don't know, and the results haven't been released yet, although Kathy will, I'm sure, share them as soon as she gets them, which will probably take another week. We did a public mind survey of all the students here at the Metropolitan campus and the ones at Forum, but specifically here. And we have statistical approved results and all that good stuff. But we looked at food on campus, we looked at faculty interaction, we looked at classrooms, we looked at the library, we looked at the academic advisement center. We looked all over the place, okay? This was a 14 or 15 page survey. So now Kathy already has these results, so I will share them with you. When I get the results back, I'm reading through everything, and 87% of our students are satisfied or highly satisfied with the library. So as a collective whole, you are the most satisfactory place on campus. They think you guys are good. So whatever you're doing it right, okay? So I'm supposed to provide you with strategies, and I'm like, great, I'm providing the strategies to the people who know what they're doing. But yeah, kudos to you. That's wonderful news for you guys, and I'm sure you worked incredibly hard to do that. Is there anything else for me? So you got all the stuff covered. All right.
Michelle, thank you so
You're
much
welcome.
for coming to join us.